John Stuart Mill argues that the meaning of proper names is fundamentally different from the meaning of general names. According to Mill, proper names do not have connotation. They serve only to label individuals or places without conveying any descriptive meaning. In contrast, general names carry meaning because they are associated with certain attributes or qualities. The primary disagreement between Mill and Frege arises in their views on whether proper names convey meaning or if they function purely as labels. The philosopher Gottlob Frege challenged Mill's view by arguing that proper names do have meaning beyond mere labeling. He introduces a distinction between sense and reference, which allows proper names to communicate information. Frege's argument can be summarized as follows. Premise 1. Proper names have a sense, which is the way a name is understood or the information it conveys. Premise 2. Proper names have a reference, which is the actual object or person the name denotes. Conclusion. A proper name does not function as a simple label. Its meaning consists of both its sense and its reference. For Mill, a name such as Thomas Jefferson has no meaning beyond pointing to a specific individual. If a person hears the name but does not know anything about him, they gain no information from the name itself. It is simply a marker that refers to the historical figure. In contrast, Frege argues that a name like Thomas Jefferson carries a sense that helps the listener understand who the person is, such as one of the founding fathers of the United States and the first president to succeed an opponent from a rival political party. Even if someone does not have complete knowledge of Jefferson's life, they still associate the name with the historical figure of political importance. The distinction becomes particularly important with when different names refer to the same individual. Suppose someone says Theodore Geisel is Dr. Seuss. If Mill is correct and proper names have no connotation, then this statement merely equates two labels for the same person without adding new information. However, in reality, the statement does provide knowledge. One might recognize Dr. Seuss as the famous author of The Cat in the Hat, while being unaware that his birth name was Theodore Geisel. Frege's theory explains this by showing that Theodore Geisel and Dr. Seuss have different senses, even though they share the same reference. Mill's theory struggles to explain why identity statements like this are informative. If proper names are just labels with no meaning beyond reference, then saying Dr. Seuss is Theodore Geisel should be as trivial as saying Dr. Seuss is Dr. Seuss. Yet this is clearly not the case. Frege's distinction between sense and reference resolves this issue by showing that a name does more than just designate an object. It also conveys how the object is presented or understood. Another major issue for Mill's theory arises with names that do not correspond to real-world references. If meaning is strictly tied to reference, then how can names for fictional characters or hypothetical entities be meaningful? Consider the name Sherlock Holmes. According to Mill's framework, this name should be meaningless because it does not refer to a real person. However, when people hear the name, they immediately associate it with a brilliant detective who lives on Baker Street and solves crimes using logical deduction. Frege's distinction allows for an explanation. Even though Sherlock Holmes has no real-world reference, it still has sense, meaning it can be understood as conveying certain ideas and attributes. Mill's theory, which does not account for sense, cannot easily explain why fictional names are still meaningful in language. In conjunction with this, there are additional complications when it comes to figures who may have once existed, but their identities cannot be corroborated with certainty. For instance, an ancient story references the King Arthur, a name used for an unknown ruler from centuries ago. If there is no definitive historical record identifying this king, does the name King Arthur have meaning? Mill's theory would suggest that unless the name refers to a specific identifiable person, it lacks significance. However, people who encounter the name in texts or myths will likely associate it with an unnamed but important ruler, showing that the name carries sense even if its reference remains unclear. Frege's model allows for such cases by showing that a name does not need a fixed reference to be meaningful. Frege's distinction between sense and reference also applies to cases where a name is used metaphorically or symbolically. The name Rome, for instance, might be used to refer not only to the historical city of Rome, but also to a broader concept of civilization, power, or empire. While Mill's theory would limit the name's function to simply denoting the city, Frege's theory explains that the sense of Rome allows it to carry deeper connotations depending on context. Ultimately, Frege's distinctions between sense and reference make his theory more effective as explaining how proper names work in language. While Mills treats them as simple labels, Frege shows that they carry meaning by communicating information about their reference. This difference is crucial for understanding how identity statements work, how fictional names convey meaning, and how the names can change its significance over time. Mill's model remains influential, but its limitations in explaining the meaning of proper names make Frege's approach the more comprehensive and accurate framework.